Welcome back, everybody, to Strong Women of God, the Strong Women series. I am so excited today to have a very special guest. Her name is Raquel Doughty-Espada, and she is the founder of Writings by Raquel. She also happens to work for Pillar College with the VP of Academics, so she's got a lot going on right now. And Raquel, you and I go way back. My first Connect group, actually, that I ever went to, you were leading it. And I remember we met at like a restaurant. I don't remember the name of the restaurant. No, it was in Montclair somewhere. But I was so nervous and so scared, but you guys were so welcoming. So happy to have you here. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Yeah, I can't believe so much time has gone by since we met. And you are not the only one that was nervous. The leaders of Connect groups are nervous as well. So it was a pleasure to
Yeah,
meet you and be on this journey up to now.
I know. And we actually haven't talked in ages. I feel like it's like literally ages, but I'm happy that you're here now and just want to hear everything that, God is doing in your life. And before we get to all of that, I would love to know just one, how are you doing, first of all? It's been a crazy, crazy season.
Yeah.
Never ending season, it feels like at times, but how have you been through everything?
Well, this year has been a challenging year all around for all of us. We all have something that we're dealing with. I have to say, first, I'm grateful to have my job, have provision. I'm grateful for my health and a roof over my head, the things I need. But other things have been challenging. There's been health issues in my family, losses in my family. People have passed away, and just seeing what friends are going through, my parents are going through. It's all been challenging. Everything. It's kind of like you take the days as they come. Each day is different. Your feelings, like working from home, a little bit of isolation can be challenging, but I'm grateful that I'm here at this point now. I feel like God has been with me each of these days, and it's been like 8 months at this point. It feels slow, but it also has gone by really fast.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I can't even imagine everything that like individually, like we know corporately, like people are going through so much stuff, but when you sit down to actually talk to people, it has been just so difficult. And I think for us anyway, our faith helps a bit with that, knowing and understanding that we always have hope and that things will get better. But it's definitely still been really difficult. So thank you that in the midst of all that, you're taking time to talk with me. You look great, by the way,
you
too.
look great.
We're like
Thank you.
matching in black today. Um,
Yes, unplanned.
but let's get started. Let's get into it. I always love starting off with people's names. I think it says so much, sometimes unintended. We don't even think it has any power, but it always does. So tell me about your name. Do you love it? Do you like it? Where'd you get it from? What do you think about it?
Honestly, I can genuinely say I love my name. And I can say that because I take no credit. My parents chose this. But my name is Raquel. It is the Spanish version of Rachel in the Bible. And it actually means innocence or lamb of God.
Um,
And I just think it's a really unique, special name. And the story in the Bible is, I don't know, for those who don't know, Jacob in the Bible fell in love with her. Um, and then her father basically tricked him into marrying her older sister. He
yeah.
had worked 7 years for that sister. And because he loved Rachel so much, he worked another 7 years to have her. And she's actually the mother of Joseph and Benjamin. So I just think it's a really pretty name in Spanish. I love it. And my mother teases me because when I was younger, I would always be like, my name is Raquel, it's not Rachel. And I get it all the time now as an adult, but people are not as familiar with it as Rachel, but I love it. And the last names is interesting because my father's last name is Doughty
Mhm.
and it means brave. And
Wow.
my mother's last name is Espada, which means sword. So you kind of put like Lamb of God, brave, sword all together. And I just think, it's kind of like I'm really into the way that you are with meanings
Yeah.
behind names and words. especially as a writer. So I think it's just the way that my name fell. I love it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's so powerful too, like Lamb of God, the sword, and then you said Doughty means brave.
Yeah.
So cool. So cool. Awesome. So, hey, let's jump right into your story. Tell us about your journey with God. Where did it start, or whatever you want to share really about it? Would love to hear it.
Well, I would say the foundation has been from my mother's side of the family. My father and mother are 10 years apart. They met, I believe, they actually met when she was like at the end of high school, but they didn't get together until she was in college. And she is the youngest girl of a Latin family, religious family. Um, she was born in Puerto Rico. They're Puerto Rican, Costa Rican. My grandfather came here from Puerto Rico to start a church in the Lower East Side in Manhattan. And they ended up moving to Jersey because there's 4 kids and it's what they could afford at the time. And so basically the premise of them coming to the States was to begin a church. And so, my mom being the youngest and a girl in a Latin religious family comes with its great things and great childhood moments, but it also comes with like challenges and expectations. And then you have my father's side of the family, who they were like the California family. Like he grew up mostly in Cali boy, into cars and bikes and, believing in God, but it wasn't really part of their home. So you take this like Latin religious woman with this like 10-year older, like cool, chill guy, and you put them together, and then they have me. And my mother was really young. She was 25. And so I grew up with the knowledge of God and having that background from my mother's side of the family. And they split when I was 5. So they separated when I was 5, but actually legally divorced when I was 10. But what's interesting part of my story, which is a little bit unique, is that at the time I actually stayed with my father from 5 to 13.
Wow.
So I was living in a single parent home that was a man, which at the time, this is the 80s, that wasn't common. But I was very influenced by my mother's side of the family because I didn't have a lot of my father's side of the family around. So, I'm growing up with my father, but like I have so much of the Latin, like Christian culture that's being impressed upon me as a young girl. And I grew up very close to my cousins. And then another unique fact would be I'm an only child from both of them. And so it was kind of like, as you grow up, you have these things where I'm going to Sunday school, I'm going to church, I'm doing the holidays, I'm doing the camps, I'm doing youth group, I'm doing all these things from my mother's side, but then I'm going home, living with my father. And as you get older, as a young girl going into junior high, you start to kind of like want that motherly presence around a little bit more. And not that she wasn't there, but just like in the home, I mean. And so as I was getting older, my mother told me that when I went to this camp, I was in upstate New York, it was a Christian camp. And I went from the ages of like 10 to 16. And she said that when I was like 10 or 11, I went up to the front as a young girl and I accepted God. And I remember kind of going up front, but I can't say I remember like mentally what I was thinking, but I just know that it was something that once you do that, it's like becomes a part of who you are and a part of your journey. But as I go through junior high, you start getting into your preteens and like your friends and other things become more important. And I happened to like at a very crucial stage in a young girl's life, I moved to my mom's at 14 years old. And we were living alone for a little while, but then I ended up moving with my grandparents. So I had even more of that influence again in my life with God. And so I would say like from a young girl through into high school, it was a big part of my life. my friends, God, the music, the activities, and it was there. But as you get older, high school and friends and the world kind of like, comes in, and it challenges you to figure out what you believe on your own, at a really difficult time in a life where you're like, you have all these things bombarding you as a teenager of like romance and just the world and temptations and friends and what you're going to do with your life as you're ending high school. I mean, who knows at 17, 18 years old. And then, some things happened in my life that were kind of got me off track, just with relationships and a lot of like hurts within my own personal family. And I kind of carried that into as I was going to college. And I went to a community school. And I feel like as I was 18, 19 years old, I was just confused at the time of like, I knew God was there. God was in my heart. It was like this thread throughout my life, but I didn't know like what I personally believed anymore. It started to become like what the Espada side wanted me to do and the expectations and go to church, do this, do that. And it was just like, I felt life was kind of like pulling me. But I feel like God's hand is always on you, even when you are far, and prayers of other people over you are what cover you and you don't even realize it. So I feel like prayers of my mom, my grandmother was a monumental impact in my life. It brought me to a college up in Boston, which happens to be a small private college. And
You went to school in Boston? I did
yeah.
too.
Oh, nice. Where did you go?
I went to Northeastern. Where were you?
I was at Eastern Nazarene College. It was
I
in
know.
South Boston in Quincy. Yeah. So it was a really like pivotal time in my life in terms of just me as a person, as a young woman, but also in my faith walk, because I had felt like I was kind of away from it for a little while. And I got there and it was like this world opened up to me where you're kind of like living in the dorm. So you're not under your parents' roof, but you're not totally in the world. You kind of have a safety net. And I got involved in all these things. I got involved in like women's groups as a 19, 20, 21-year-old woman. That was the beginning of like being really a part of like a women's small group. We were starting to connect and open up. And I got involved in choir and the newspaper with writing and dancing and traveling with my friends' bands. And so it was like this world opened up to me and I got to reconnect with my journey with God. But there was a lot of, pains and unresolved issues that I went into that stage of my life with. So God was there and he was working on me, but there was a lot of healing that needed to take place. Forgiveness, and really like as an adult deciding for myself to give that back to him. We kind of like hold on to it. It's like, okay, you can have this, but I'm going to keep this over here. And I feel like, just it was like a really weird, as you're entering your 20s, you're figuring yourself out. And I graduated, I came back to Jersey, and my 20s just became like this crazy, tumultuous, fun, exciting, wild, but also like not a linear way. It was like came back and I was going to go to my childhood church. It had diminished in size. I felt like there wasn't really anything for someone for me, like someone in her 20s trying to figure out like keep God in her life, with, more freedom as that you attain as you get older. And so I stopped going to church. And it wasn't so much that like, oh, I wasn't interested in God. It was just like nothing was going on. There was nothing for women. There was nothing for my age that I was uninterested. It was one of those things that I would like go to church because it was like what I should be doing. I'd go there on Sunday and be like, is this over yet? You're counting down the time and you're like, you don't want your mom to be mad at you. And so I just really got away from it. And so I would say, yeah, it was like throughout all of my 20s, came back at 22, and I don't think I revisited in a real way church in a consistent way until I was 31. And so that's, that's like about 8, 9 years of just being away. I mean, God was always like, I feel like once you have that seed in you, it's always there. It's just a matter of if you're watering it, if you're building into it. Who are you surrounding yourself by? What are you being a part of? And I wasn't really doing that. So it was there, and it would be like this voice that was always a constant in the back of my mind. It would actually make me annoyed. I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear it, because it would be like the good and the bad, and they're like vying for your attention, your decisions. And it would just drive me crazy in my 20s. I was like, I don't want a conscience. I just want to do what I want to do. And I wanted to like hold on to being upset and hold on to things that had happened to me. But thank God that he never lets you go, and he loves you and he pursues you, especially women. He pursues your heart. And it's almost like he courts you, into this relationship with him, but it's never too much. He's a gentleman. He waits for you to allow him. And I feel like as I entered my 30s, I don't know, heartbreak was one of the things, but there were other things that just made me feel like I need to get back into church. Like I need a community, I need something. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know. I even remember thinking to myself, what am I supposed to do, God? I'm supposed to knock on church's doors and just like, this is where I'm supposed to go. But God is God. And I don't know if you've heard of Liquid Church. It's a church in New Jersey, has multiple campuses.
Yeah.
And I had heard that they had a program for young people. And that's really what I was like looking for. So I was like, my mom and I, we talked about it on a Saturday, and literally the next day we went, and I started going back to church. And it was the first time I could say that it was like me as an adult choosing for myself. It wasn't because of my family or because of the church I went to, or it was not outside factors. It was like my own inner, like, I feel like I kind of need to get back into this. I needed something. I didn't know what that was going to do, what the future looked like. Mm-hmm. So I started going to that church, and I was working out a lot at the time, and they had like this faith and fitness group that would meet, and I just started meeting people. I started going to groups, and that was like the beginning of the last 10 years of my life, where it's just been this crazy, wild, amazing, difficult, like inspiring journey of my walk with God, which eventually led me to going to Hillsong, which is how you and I met. And when I got to Hillsong, I had been in church for probably like 2 years at that point. And so I got to Hillsong, and I was just like, hit the ground running. Like, I'm going to go to everything. I'm going to go everywhere. I'm going to be everyone. Like, I'm going to do this. But it's crazy because I never saw myself where I was going to lead a connect group. I was a part of this group called Pastor Rock, which I'm sure you know, but for those who don't know, you go into detention centers and talk with the kids there. And just being part of outreaches, going into New York and handing out food and meeting with people. And, it was just like, if you would have looked at my life 10, 15, 20 years prior, you would never think that I would end up doing those things. I was serving in midweek services. I served Sundays in green room. And it was like, to say it now as I'm hearing myself, it's almost like you're like, oh, I did this and this. But really, when you really think about your journey of where God brings you from and to where he brings you to, the things the doors he opens for you and the opportunities he creates for you, the people that you meet, like, it's only God. Like, I would have never, when someone approached me about leading a group, you kind of laugh. You're like, what? Me? Like, I'm going to do this? Like, why do you want me to do it? But it goes to show that God is going to, if you let him, he takes your story, because initially it'll be like about you, but ultimately it's about what he does through you for others. So I would say the journey with God has been not dependent on a church building, although that's a vessel, and it's not dependent on people, although that is an instrument that he uses to speak to you and cover you. but it's really been a relationship, you know, because all those other things are going to fluctuate. And as much as I try to kind of like, you know, at times put him back here, like he always would creep up. And I'm like, okay, God, all right, fine. This is how I'm really feeling. This is what I'm really going through. This is what I really want. I'm mad at you, or thank you for this. And it just becomes this relationship where you learn to just be raw with him and be yourself because he knows anyway.
Yeah.
So my walk with God has not been without its challenges, without its highs and lows, without its difficult moments. It's also been with like incredible, amazing moments. Even just, let's see, 6 years ago, I decided to get baptized. And I mean, like just even thinking that I chose to do that is crazy to me in a good way. Because I never thought I would do that. I never saw myself doing it. But it's just once, you know, he gets in your heart and touches your heart, you end up making choices and life decisions that you've never expected. So he's number one. At least I try to. Sometimes in my own humanness, he drops a little bit,
Yeah.
but eventually I get him back up there.
Yeah. I love, Raquel, I love that you were just talking about how it's a relationship, you know, and I always think about this, you know, in my own checks of like, how much time am I actually spending with God? Because it is a relationship. And in your normal sort of, if you think about like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your spouse, whatever, if you don't spend time with that person, the relationship is not as strong. And the more time that you spend with that person, the stronger the relationship becomes. And it's the same exact thing with God. You know, I also love the picture of you. You kind of mentioned earlier that he was sort of courting you, you know, and coming towards you. And I think that's such a beautiful reminder because I think there are times, especially right now, there's so much noise happening. There's so much noise, and it can be really easy to be overwhelmed and to get too caught up in the world and everything that's happening in the world. And you're right, like God kind of comes down and down and down, and it kind of reveals in our hearts like what things we are actually worshiping, you know, be it politics or bad news or whatever the case may be. What we spend more time on, we have to be careful that's not becoming something that we are worshiping unintentionally. So I love what you have mentioned there. So, Raquel, one of the reasons that I wanted you on here is because you have decided to take a big step forward in actually, you know, publishing your writing, like having your writing on Instagram at Writings by Raquel. We'll put the link below. But I would love to hear more about your journey, your purpose, right? God, what God has put in you, how you decided to start this, why you decided to start it. Anything you want to share?
Well, it's really interesting because even just you putting that out there is wild to me, thinking about my journey over the years. When I was younger, I started writing when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And, you know, you're a young girl, and it was kind of like I didn't know what to do with all my thoughts and my feelings. You know, when you're an only child in a single family home and they're working, you know, out of necessity, of course, providing for you, you find yourself in your head a lot. And I've been blessed in the sense of like, I've always had different types of friends. I've loved that. I've loved having different types of people in my life since I was young, being exposed to different backgrounds, different cultures. But when you're home, you know, you're kind of alone. So I started writing out of feeling alone. And I think it's something that so many people deal with. And it's almost can be like a shaming thing because you don't want to admit first to yourself, but then outwardly, like I feel alone, I feel this or that. For multiple reasons, you know. So I started writing, and I don't even know how. I don't know where this idea came from. It was literally like one day I had this little journal and I was in my room and I started writing. And that, as I grew up throughout my schooling, it was really an outlet. You know, I know that can be like a cliche where it was like, oh, it was just my outlet, but it really truly was. I had so many thoughts, feelings about myself, about my family life, about God, about a lot of what I grappled with for years was just like, where do I belong? Because I have two sides of my family. I have the faith, filled Christian side, and then the one that believes in God, but it's not as a part of the family home. And then I have like the Latin side and the Caucasian side. I have the only child side. I went to a lot of different schools. I went to three colleges. I went to three high schools and two colleges. And I had different types of friends, but a lot of what was something that I dealt with mentally and emotionally was like, I don't know where I fit. Like I'm born in America, growing up, but I speak Spanish and I'm in this Latin culture, but in an American world. But I'm not like Spanish enough for this and I'm not white enough for this. I'm always like in the middle. And it was like life and society tries to make you fit into what they can easily put into this box of like, you are this, check this. And I never felt like I could check these boxes 100%. I was like, even on forms, like what do I put, even like the way I look, I would get a lot, well, you look like this, but what are you? Are you this? Oh, but your last name is this. Oh, but your first name. And it's not anything like people aren't meaning to do anything negative to you. It's just as you're growing up, it becomes like something you're struggling with as your identity. You ask yourself like, who am I? Where do I fit? Where do I belong? I don't know God, and I would be upset like, why do I have to answer things like this, God? Why is it always so complicated? Why can't you just give me this one thing and it's easy and people will understand it? And my writings were born out of feeling like I don't know what to do with all of what's here and what's here, but I want like a healthy way. And you don't think that when you're 13, but it's, God opens these doors and gives you these avenues. And so for a lot of my life, it was like a method of healing and processing for myself. Like I look back on some of the things that I wrote and I was like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about, girl? But as I got older, I realized that it's your gifts and your talents, if I can say that word, they come from God, I believe. And I believe he doesn't give them to you to hoard them. And so I started feeling like I need to put this out for other people. And throughout my life, I would do like open mics and poetry or like church stuff, read them to like my parents or like very close friends. But I knew that I could do more. And I was just shy. And I was very like, for a long time, very into like, what are people going to say? What are they going to think of me? And it's interesting because it's not always like the general public. Like I could get up in a room and say it, but it was like the people closest to me that knew me and knew my life. I was worried like what they were going to say. I was like, because, people see you and like sometimes in a linear way, like of how they meet you, whether it's church or work or family, but there's so many layers to us as people and as women, we're not just a mother or a wife or, in business, we're all these beautiful layers that God has created. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. I don't want these people like, Raquel, why are you so deep? Why do you ask so many questions? Why are you so sensitive? And I'm just like, I grappled with that. Like I can laugh now, but I really grapple with that because I was like, why did you make me like this, God? Why do I feel this way? Why am I sensitive like this? Why do I see things this way? But I realized part of my innate purpose, I feel, is to connect with others and to relate to others. And a lot of it has been about women in my life. I feel like a passion toward women because we are like these beautiful creations. And God is so tender with us and we have so much to offer and so much value. And there's so many things outside of us that get inside of us that like tear us down and don't allow us to be what we are intended and meant for, destined for. And so that ties into my writing how. It ties in because something as small as like an Instagram page was very daunting for me. I was just like, no, I'm going to put it in the world. I don't want people to read all of it,
Yeah.
But I just like, it's been almost 2 years I've had it. And I just decided to like get out of my own way, you know, and I was just like, I'm gonna put this out. And I didn't really tell anybody. I didn't market it, you know, I wasn't out for like thousands of followers. I just said to myself, just be yourself, be authentic, because that is what people are gravitate toward. They gravitate toward you being real, the good, the bad, the ugly, the messy, and not trying to always present yourself in a way like I got it all together, everything is fine. It's like, no, these are things that I'm dealing with, and that the outside can look a certain way. And so we, you know, we as people can tend to compare ourselves, especially with social media. Oh my gosh, everything is like the highlight reel, right? So
Absolutely.
it was my way of just being like, this is the part that's not the highlight. You know, this is what I'm dealing. And it wasn't even, it isn't always my story. A lot of, you know, some of the time before, as I was growing up, my writings were about me and what I'm dealing with, what I'm going through. And it slowly adjusted to, this is what's going on. And maybe you're dealing with it too. And hey, you're not alone. Like I'm here. I go through it too. And, it's allowed me to connect with people like you who are doing things for women in her own way, and we all need it. We all need these avenues, and allowed me for people, you know, to connect with people who are reading these things and writing to me or commenting or saying, hey, you know, like I get it. And it's allowed for conversations in my personal life to come out, and people like, I didn't know you did that. And just being like, oh man, we have so many insecurities that block us from what God has for us. And if we just do it afraid and do it with those insecurities and choose like, okay, this is where I'm at, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to try and put it and leave it in your hands, and you do with it what you want, then he will bless it. And so that's how the Instagram page started. And it really came from my own battles and feelings and my and even certain writings, my relationship with myself and with God and with the people in my life, and just being like, hey, this is we're all dealing with something and we can all connect on this level, and to not let fear hold me back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible.
That's incredible.
Um, please go and follow Raquel at Writings by Raquel on Instagram so you can see some of the things that she is chatting about. I can feel your passion for this, even through the screen. So I'm excited that women will be able to connect with you and to be encouraged to feel like you're not walking this alone. Especially right now, especially in this season. I think the biggest trick is to make you think that you're isolated, that no one else in the world understands what you're going through. But it's just not the case. And so I encourage you to go follow her page right now and send her some love. Raquel, thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us at SWOG. You're welcome to come back anytime. And if you want to share one of your poems one day, come back. We'd love to have you here. And for everyone else who's watching, we want to thank you also for watching, for subscribing. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram if you're not doing it already. And maybe you are here and you have a story and you want to share it, send me a DM. I love to hear stories. So we'll talk soon. Thank you so much, Raquel.
Thank you, Maxine.
Take care.